How's it going? This is Dylan with Dylan Talks Tone. So, every Monday night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time on kprlive.com, in addition to our YouTube channel, we're also doing a radio show. On that radio show, Dylan Talks Tone, we've been talking about guitar setup. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you would. Dylan Talks Tone. There's probably a button on one of these bottom corners. I can't remember which. And also go check out kprlive.com. And you can listen to all the replays from those radio shows. We've been talking about guitar setup, and now we're down to intonation. Intonation is a tough one. A lot of people fight with it a lot. So we're going to use the hardest guitar, which typically is a Telecaster with 3 barrel saddles on it, and we're going to discuss what intonation is. Most people think of intonation just being the fact that the higher frets are out of tune on a guitar. But what intonation really is it is when you have more than one note played together, that they be in tune with one another. And for that to happen all the time, the guitar needs to be set up correctly. The baseline intonation for a guitar is actually math. It has nothing to do with the tuner. And what I mean by that is, there's a couple of things we want to do before we even get this far. So let's talk about that. Go through our other videos about guitar setup, because if your nut height is not right, if your string height at the saddles are not right, if it is very high, then chances are you're never going to get the guitar to intonate properly anyway. Because when you pull down on the string, you're pulling the guitar away from pitch. The further you have to pull down on the string to fret it, the further out of tune that note is going to be. Okay? Now the one note might be okay, but then you play somewhere else on the neck and it's going to be different because you're pulling it down differently depending on where you are on the fretboard. It's just kind of the way guitar works. So not every note is exactly in tune along the fretboard. Try that one time as an experiment. Tune your string exactly in tune when it's open. And then leave it hooked into the tuner and fret the first note, then fret the second note, fret the third note, and go all the way up the neck, and you'll see that some of them end up being sharp and flat. It's just because that's the way the guitar works, okay? So, the baseline figures for this are based on the scale length of the guitar. This guitar is 25.5 inches. Gibson scales are 24.75 inches. So this guitar, half of the scale length, which is your 12th fret, is 12.75 inches. So what we do, we measure from the nut to the 12th fret, make sure that it's 12.75 inches, make sure you're doing it to the right scale length, and then measure from the 12th fret to the very tip top of the saddle, where the spring breaks over the saddle, okay? And make sure that that is 12.75 inches on your high E string, okay? You can do that before you do anything else. Just mathematically measure that one right there and make sure that it's right, okay? And the reason we have to move the other ones is really to compensate, and you hear that word, compensated saddles. The only reason we move these other ones is to compensate for the thickness of the strings that are different than your high E. So your B is going to be thicker, your G is going to be thicker, and so on. Okay, that's why you have to check this when you change string gauges, because the thickness of the string will affect where the saddle has to be to maintain that half of the scale length, but compensated for the thickness of the string. That's the only reason why you have to move those other ones. Okay, so that being said, you don't have to move them very much. It's not that much. Mathematically, it's actually half the thickness of the neck. It's half the thickness of the difference to the next string, which is only a few thousandths of an inch. Okay, so if you're having to move this way out of the way, then something else is wrong, and you have to go all the way back to the beginning of the setup and check it. Okay, so you're only moving it a little bit. Mathematically, check the high E, pull back the B a little bit, pull back the G a little bit, then the D is going to be forward a little bit, the A is going to be behind the D a little bit, and the E is going to be behind the A a little bit. Okay, you've seen those drawings, right, where there's kind of two slants. Just set it up like that visually, maintaining the 25.5 inch or whatever your scale length is on your high E. Then plug it into a tuner. Tune your guitar perfectly. Make sure that it's with open strings, make sure that it's perfectly in tune, and fret the 12th fret. Don't use harmonics. People will argue with me until the cows come home about this, but don't use harmonics. We don't play the guitar that way, okay? We don't play like this. We fret the note. And remember that when we pull down on the string, it changes the tension of the string. So, fret the note, but barely enough. You don't want to be like cranking down on it, because you can, right? You can pull it out of tune just by how you fret it. So fret it very lightly. Done. That's all you got to do. Make sure that it's in tune. Now, which way do you adjust it? That's the big question. If you're a right-handed player and you're holding your guitar this way, which you always want to do, never flat on a bench, hold it this way, and you fret that 12th fret, and the needle goes toward the nut, move the saddle toward the nut. If the needle goes towards the bridge, move the saddle towards the bridge. Obviously, if you're left-handed, you have to do it backwards. So that's it. Fret the 12th fret. If the needle goes towards the nut, move it towards the nut. If the needle goes towards the bridge, move it towards the bridge. It's that simple. You're not going to have to move it that much if the rest of your setup is correct. Okay? That's it, man. That's intonation. If you can't get it right, if there's one string that's way off, if you look down at your saddles and one's pulled way weird and it's all weird, go back to the beginning of your guitar setup. A lot of people say, well, I got it all perfect, but I can't intonate the thing. It won't set up the rest of the way. It won't intonate properly. Then that means something else in your setup is wrong. This is the last step. Besides pickup adjustment, this is the last step. So if something's wrong, that means that something else in your setup is wrong. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. I think a lot of people try to fight this. It's not that hard. But it just means that something else in your setup is wrong. So go back to the beginning. Remember the steps of your setup. First, it's your neck relief. Then it's your nut height. Then it's your string height. Then it's your intonation. You do it in that order. And if you do everything in that order, and you do it to middle of the road proper specs, then this will happen very, very simply. My name is Dylan. This is Dylan Talks Tone. If you have any questions about this or anything else, hit me up. Please follow us on all the social medias on the internets. So Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Dylan Pickups or Dylan Talks Tone. Google us. You'll find us. I promise. If you have any questions, please hit me up anytime, and I would love to make a video just for you. I hope you have a great day.